So, can you talk a bit, Jordan, first about how this project fell into your hands and what excited you about it?
Well, after my last movie, I'd been wanting to make a big movie because I fell in love with big movies. That's what made me want to be a filmmaker as a kid. That's what led me to film history and foreign cinema and art house cinema. And that's what made me fall in love with the theatrical experience. And now big movies have such a negative stigma, and it's so sad to me. So I wanted to do a big movie, and Warner's and Legendary came to me and said, "We want to do a new King Kong movie." And my first response was, awesome. And my second response was, why? Why do we need a new King Kong movie? Why should this exist? And I think a lot of audiences potentially felt the same way. And the amazing thing about those studios is they said, well, what movie would you make? And I went away for the weekend and thought, and then this idea popped in my head of saying, let's do something we haven't seen before. Let's take a Vietnam War movie and combine it with monsters. Let's do Apocalypse Now with King Kong. Let's do choppers and napalm and Hendrix and all that imagery, but let's put it in the context that you've never seen before. And that became incredibly fresh and incredibly exciting to me. And it was all sort of grounded around the idea that in the early 70s, we put satellites in the sky and we started mapping the world. And we started seeing things that we had never seen before. So it was credible that we would find an island that we had never seen before.
And it's important because the word fresh is key here because this isn't a prequel, this isn't a sequel, this is a fresh, new vision of this iconic character and his story, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was important to not have it be a prequel, to not have it be a sequel, if it's gonna stand on its own 2 feet, when you're comparing it to the original King Kong, which is film history, which is an icon of cinema, and is an icon of pop culture, you have to do something that puts its own stamp on this. It has to be able to stand on its own in a world where we have big movies every weekend now. You know, every weekend there's a new big movie, and I think audiences are jaded by that because they all feel the same to them. So how do we take something that people love but put it in a package that suddenly feels new?
And it works really well. But what is it about this character of Kong, this iconic character, that is still relevant today and still audiences are fascinated by him today?
Well, I think Kong represents a very pure part of all of us that you and I sitting here and everyone watching this ultimately can relate to the idea of being misunderstood and how painful that is to be misunderstood, for someone not to take you for who you truly are. And I think Kong represents that in a very primordial way. And I think for us in this film, Kong also just represents surrendering yourself to something greater than you, the unknown, you know, the beauty of nature. And I think that there are just very core things that we're missing in our lives and that remind us of that.
Can you talk a bit about this amazing cast that you've assembled here?
Look, as a director, I have an embarrassment of riches where I have such an insane and talented and diverse cast that I couldn't dream of. Every day when I would wake up, I'd have to pinch myself with the people that I was working with, and a big part of that was using this cast to send a message to audiences that this is not some disposable popcorn movie. This is not just some cash grab. This is a movie that is just as much about people as it is about creatures. And the way I was able to get the cast was by talking to them and saying, look, there's gonna be insane action in this movie. There's gonna be action that people have never seen before. Monkeys punching helicopters out of the sky. But also those moments are only important to me if we have the moments where we're on you, we're on your face, where we're lingering, we're on your eyes, and we're seeing what this journey is also doing to you. What that sort of psychological descent, what the spiritual awakening, what these moments are for you as an actor and a character. So, you know, this movie is as much about people as it is about creatures.
And what about what it did to you? What was it like to you to be directing Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, Brie Larson, Tom Hiddleston, these extraordinary actors, a young filmmaker like you?
Well, look, I think for me, the way I work as a director is directing to me is about trust. And I feel very fortunate that a big group of those actors are people that I would now call my family. You know, we went through hell and back together, and making movies is a lot like going to war at times, where you sort of vanish into this like crazy other world, and then you emerge on the other side, and no one knows what you went through. And so, you know, there's a lot of my favorite stuff in the movie I think developed because of the rapport and the relationship that a lot of the actors and I had. You know, a lot of the things with John C. Reilly in this film are things that we were on set improvising and riffing and finding and giving ourselves the freedom to explore with each other. A lot of the camaraderie between the soldiers in the films, that's real. That's stuff that, you know, we were sort of going through together as we were going through this process. And for me, I love building that family. And, you know, it was just a joke, like, oh, you know, much like Hearts of Darkness, you know, Coppola went into the jungle and lost his mind, and we were like, let's go lose our minds in the jungle, and then you're in the jungle and you've lost your mind, and the way you get out of it is with your family. I feel like that's how you survive this.
Following up on that, how was the experience of shooting on location in Vietnam, in Australia, in Hawaii?
Shooting on location was super important because Kong and the monsters were always going to be computer generated. So for the actors and for the audience, I wanted to give them as much of a tactile feel as possible. I think audiences are so smart now where they can feel whether it's real or not. And a big part of this movie is real. Shooting in Vietnam in particular was one of the highlights of my life. It's one of the most beautiful countries on the planet. The people are incredibly gracious and kind. The culture, the food, everything about it. Being able to put locations on film that have never been shot before, being the first movie of this size to ever shoot in Vietnam, it was like a life honor. It really, I hope that people walk out of this movie and say, where did they shoot that? And that this movie does something similar for New Zealand as Lord of the Rings did, where New Zealand was Middle Earth, like Vietnam is Skull Island, and it's such a crucial part. And so being able to go there, it was difficult, and it was draining, and you know, normally actors would be completely tired, but we were all looking around at how amazing it was to have this opportunity to be in a place like that.
But then, of course, crucial is also getting Kong right. Can you talk about that process and your collaboration with ILM?
Getting Kong right is incredibly important. And we knew from the beginning that we had to do something different with him, but we also had to sort of honor what's come before it. And so, you know, we really went back to the 33 version, the exaggerated features that he had, the fact that he wasn't just a monkey or a gorilla, he was a movie monster. And I grew up on creature features and movie monster movies. And so I wanted to turn him back into that exaggerated proportions and capital M movie monster. But then I also wanted to turn him even more than ever before into a god. I wanted him to walk upright, to carry himself with a nobility and a regal sense to him. But when he walked, he also had like a sadness to him. He's a lonely protector of this island. He's the last of his kind. And so he carries himself simultaneously with a raw power and yet a tiresome nature. And the team that I had, Jeff White and the people at ILM, the work that they did to help realize that is extraordinary. And I mean, there are like 18 million hairs on Kong. You know, it's insane the level of detail and craft that they put in, and the love that they used with like the combination of sort of face cap and mocap, and then a lot, way more than normal, a lot of traditional animation. People going in and keyframing the way Kong moved, because I wanted him to move in a way that I don't think any human could truly move. And we ultimately had to be able to get everything right. Kong is about connecting with that gorilla, so being able to get into those eyes, being able to see the emotion in his eyes, being able to like connect with a god. It's a tall order.